The story of our world begins not with people or kingdoms or wars, but with silence. A silence so deep that time itself had not yet learned to count. Then, 13.8 billion years ago, the silence broke. A point smaller than an atom expanded in an instant, a great unfolding we call the Big Bang. Out of that event, matter, energy, and the laws of physics themselves were born. Stars ignited, galaxies spun, and somewhere in one unremarkable arm of one galaxy, a small blue planet cooled from molten stone into oceans and sky. That planet was Earth. About 4.5 billion years ago, it took its shape. The air filled with storms, volcanoes painted the skies red, and comets delivered water. Deep within its seas, the first spark of life flickered, simple, fragile cells clinging to existence. Over eons, they grew more complex. Fish developed fins, creatures crawled onto land, reptiles ruled, and dinosaurs thundered across the continents. 66 million years ago, an asteroid struck near what is now the Yucatan Peninsula, shrouding the Earth in darkness. The giants fell, and in the quiet that followed, mammals rose. Among them, something new stirred: intelligence. 2.5 million years ago, in Africa, our ancestors, the genus Homo, learned to shape stone into tools. They carried fire, painted caves, and sang to the stars. Around 300,000 years ago, Homo sapiens appeared. With language, imagination, and memory, they could carry worlds inside their minds. By 10,000 BCE, humans across the world were still hunters and gatherers, moving with the herds, reading the sky for signs. But then, in the valleys of the Tigris and Euphrates, the Nile, the Indus, and the Yellow River, people discovered something extraordinary. They could plant seeds, tend them, and harvest more than they needed. Farming began, and with it, civilization. In Mesopotamia, around 3500 BCE, cities rose: Uruk, Ur, Babylon. They carved writing into clay tablets, invented the wheel, and mapped the heavens. Kings and priests ruled under the watchful eyes of gods carved in stone. In Egypt, along the Nile, pharaohs built pyramids to touch eternity, while scribes recorded their lives in hieroglyphs. In 2560 BCE, the Great Pyramid of Giza stood completed, a monument so precise that it still baffles engineers today. Meanwhile, in the Indus Valley, cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa thrived with grid-planned streets and advanced drainage systems. And in China, along the Yellow River, the Xia and Shang dynasties laid the foundations for what would become the oldest continuous civilization in history. The world was awakening. By 1200 BCE, stories traveled across continents. The Greeks told of gods on Olympus. The Hebrews spoke of one God guiding their people. The Vedic hymns of India sang of creation, order, and sacrifice. History began to take on not just the form of kings and wars, but of ideas. In 776 BCE, the first Olympic Games were held in Olympia, Greece. City-states like Athens and Sparta rose, one devoted to philosophy and democracy, the other to discipline and war. In 490 BCE, at Marathon, Greek hoplites turned back the mighty Persian army. A few decades later, Socrates questioned the nature of truth, Plato described the Republic, and Aristotle examined logic, ethics, and science. Their thoughts would echo across millennia. Meanwhile, in India, Siddhartha Gautama meditated beneath the Bodhi tree and became the Buddha, teaching a path to enlightenment. In China, Confucius spoke of harmony in society, and Laozi wrote of the Tao, the way of balance in nature. Ideas spread along the Silk Road, a web of trade that linked China to the Mediterranean. By 221 BCE, Qin Shi Huang unified China under the Qin dynasty, standardizing laws, currency, and script, and beginning construction of the Great Wall. In 27 BCE, Rome became an empire under Augustus, stretching from Britain to Egypt. Roman roads and aqueducts carried order, but rebellion simmered in its provinces. In 33 CE, in a Roman province called Judea, Jesus of Nazareth was crucified. His followers claimed he had risen, and a faith began that would shape much of the world. Centuries passed. Rome flourished and fractured. In 476 CE, the Western Roman Empire fell, though the Eastern Empire, the Byzantine, endured in Constantinople. In Arabia, in 610 CE, the Prophet Muhammad received revelations that became the Quran, calling for justice, unity, and worship of one God. Islam spread rapidly, building an empire that stretched from Spain to India, preserving knowledge and advancing science, mathematics, and medicine. While Europe entered its so-called Dark Ages, centers like Baghdad's House of Wisdom and Cordoba's libraries shone with learning. In 800 CE, Charlemagne was crowned Emperor of the Romans in the West, laying the foundation of medieval Europe. In 1054, the Christian Church split into Catholic and Orthodox. In 1095, Pope Urban II called the First Crusade, sending knights eastward in holy war. But history was not just kings and conquests. In the 13th century, Genghis Khan forged the largest land empire in history, the Mongol Empire, stretching from the Pacific to Eastern Europe. Trade and culture surged across Eurasia under the Pax Mongolica. Yet, in the mid-14th century, a shadow fell, the Black Death. Between 1347 and 1351, plague swept through Europe, Asia, and Africa, killing perhaps 75 million people. Whole villages vanished. Faith and fear battled in the hearts of survivors. From that devastation came change. In Florence, Venice, and beyond, the Renaissance dawned, an age of rediscovery. Artists like Leonardo da Vinci painted the human soul into their works. Michelangelo carved life into marble. In 1453, Constantinople fell to the Ottoman Turks, marking the end of the Byzantine Empire and the rise of Ottoman power. In 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed west across the Atlantic, opening a new chapter of contact and conquest between Europe and the Americas. Civilizations already thrived there. The Aztec Empire built Tenochtitlan, a city of canals and temples. The Inca stretched roads across the Andes, but disease and European weapons brought devastation. By the 16th century, Spain controlled vast territories in the New World, fueled by silver and gold. The Atlantic slave trade began, tearing millions of Africans from their homelands into brutal lives of labor. In 1517, Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to a church door in Wittenberg, sparking the Protestant Reformation. Europe was divided in faith and war. In 1600, the Tokugawa shogunate unified Japan, ushering in centuries of peace and isolation. In 1618, the 30 Years' War erupted in Europe, leaving whole regions in ruin. Yet amid conflict, science advanced. In 1687, Isaac Newton published his Principia Mathematica, revealing the laws of motion and gravity. The Enlightenment followed, with thinkers like Voltaire, Rousseau, and Locke, questioning authority and imagining governments built on reason and rights. In 1776, the American colonies declared independence, and in 1789, the French Revolution toppled monarchy in the name of liberty, equality, and fraternity. The world was shifting toward modernity. The 19th century was an age of revolutions. Steam engines drove the Industrial Revolution, transforming cities, economies, and lives. Trains shrank distances. Factories reshaped labor. In 1859, Charles Darwin published On the Origin of Species, proposing evolution by natural selection. In 1861, civil war erupted in America, deciding both union and slavery. Empires stretched across the globe. Britain ruled India, Africa, and seas beyond, but resistance grew. In 1914, a gunshot in Sarajevo ignited World War I. Trench warfare scarred Europe, and by 1918, millions lay dead. The war ended, but the peace was fragile. In 1939, World War II began. Adolf Hitler's Germany sought conquest. Japan expanded across Asia. The Holocaust murdered 6 million Jews, and millions more in unspeakable horror. By 1945, the Allies triumphed, but the atomic bomb had been unleashed on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Humanity now held the power to destroy itself. The Cold War followed, a standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union. From 1947 to 1991, they vied for power, fought proxy wars, and raced to space. In 1969, Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, declaring one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. In 1991, the Soviet Union dissolved. Globalization surged. Computers, the internet, and satellites shrank the world into a web of instant communication. Yet challenges deepened. Climate change, inequality, wars in the Middle East, and pandemics. In 2020, COVID-19 swept the globe, reminding us of both our fragility and our interconnection. Now, in 2025, we stand at a crossroads. Artificial intelligence grows, space exploration continues, and humanity grapples with questions as old as civilization. Who are we? Where are we going? What will remain when we are gone? The history of the world is not merely a sequence of battles and empires. It is the story of ideas, of resilience, of hope, from the first sparks of fire to the glow of cities seen from space, from the cries of ancient hunters to the hum of digital networks. We have always sought meaning.